Hello, everyone. Hope you're doing pleasantly well tonight. My name is Conrad on behalf of CameraStuff. Thank you for joining. I'm just going to wait until we have a nice crowd building, then we can get started on today's lesson. So, in the meantime, if you are tuning in, see, we are building a nice crowd at present. So, if you are tuning in, please drop your name and your location in the comment section. Please introduce yourself, just so I can know who's watching. All right, so today it's all going to be about me telling you how I got these shots, more or less. All right, so we're going to jump into different programs today. So we have Satellite 3D going. So I'm going to show you that in a little bit. But yeah, these are the images that I wanted to show you. And as mentioned, I'm going to show you how I went about creating these shots. So as always, if you have any questions to ask, please do drop them in the comment section and we'll tackle them as we go along. Hello, Kevin. Thank you for joining us from Lambton. I do appreciate it. Okay, so still waiting for a nice crowd to build. Okay, we have quite a lot. Okay, so I figure we can get started. All right, so just to reiterate, I'm going to show you more or less how I went about creating these shots. All right, so a rough behind the scenes image of the equipment that I used. So the magic of these shots were, well, number one is using the big octobox as a backdrop light. It's not only a backdrop light, it was a bit of a two-in-one purpose here. So the backdrop light, plus it provided a bit of edge light around our subject as well. So it's a bit of a kill two birds with one stone situation. So that big octobox there in the background, that provided a nice backdrop light. And with your model positioned very close to the octobox, that will just provide a nice edge light around the edges of her body as well. So furthermore, I used one of my favorite pieces of equipment, the curved portrait reflector, that will just add a splash of light underneath her jawline, underneath the nose, the bottom lip, in the eye socket. So it just provides a nice bottom-up fill-in light. And the point of a curved reflector is that it provides fill-in light from multiple directions. Plus, it provides a nice catch light as well. As our key light, that's the Godox softbox on the left-hand side. That's a 120 centimeter octobox. As far as the strobes are concerned, those were two DP400 400 watt strobes. Now, in saying that, I want to make a point of it, right? You don't need to use precisely this equipment, right? So you can go about using what you have, more or less, if it is similar to what I'm using. But yeah, I just wanted to say emphatically, just because I'm using it doesn't mean that you have to strictly use what I'm using. So in terms of that big octobox, that's a Fotex 150 centimeter, one of those Raja softboxes. The point of using a nice big softbox is that it gives your model a bit more playroom to move about, gives you a bit more playroom as far as your composition is concerned. But if you have a slightly smaller softbox, like a 120 centimeter softbox, or even a 90 centimeter softbox, that will do just as well, but you're going to have limited playroom as far as your model's poses are concerned, and also as far as your framing is concerned as well. All right, so a couple of more nasty behind the scenes shots. Okay, so there you have Bianca on the left-hand side doing her stuff. You can see me there in action. Okay, so you want your model, should I say, position right against the backdrop, in this case, the softbox itself. Now, in the right-hand side, you will see me using what looks like a blackboard. That's a black flag, but you can use a blackboard. You can use black paper as well, cut to size. You can use black cardboard. So that makeshift blackboard there just creates a backdrop for me. Just a tiny little black backdrop that's placed against the softbox itself. That will provide spill-in light. So the light will just spill around the edges of that blackboard and provide us with that nice room light. All right, so I took it one step further and I placed a gel inside of the softbox. So this is my somewhat haphazard approach to it. So you can be far more surgical as far as the placing of the gel inside of the softbox is concerned. So you can use gaffer tape or duct tape. Gaffer tape ideally, because gaffer tape doesn't leave behind any nasty sticky residue. But you can see my haphazard approach here. I just kind of shoved it into place So as I said, you probably should be a little bit more careful than what I was. Yeah, so something to avoid here, a couple of things. You don't want any white light to leak out from the sides of the gel. Otherwise, that will create inconsistent color. So you may have purple one side and white light on the other side. So just need to make sure that you don't have any white light leaking out of the sides of that gel. And please do not let that gel touch the flash tube or the modeling lamp. As a matter of fact, take the modeling lamp out entirely. That's a very good point, Sean. Will that light not burn the gel? If it's not positioned against the flash tube, if it is resting against the flash tube, certainly it will burn the gel. In fact, let me show you. Get my face back. I have an example of such right here. Just going to zoom in. Yeah, so that was one of my gels. It was resting against the flash tube, and you can see the results of that. It just burned right through the gel itself. So yes, do be careful with that. Let me just zoom in again. Hello. I'm just going to show you a video of what I did as well. Find that. Yeah, so literally with that gel position inside of the softbox. So again, to reiterate, please make sure that it's not touching against the flash tube. Take the modeling lamp out. So if you have one of those traditional halogen modeling lamps as part of your strobes, take that off, please. It's going to burn right through your gel. You may create a fire hazard as well. So if I wasn't careful with this, if I wasn't checking up on it, yeah, CameraStuff Studios may have been burned down by now. All right, let me just get my slideshow back. Okay, I'm just going to say hello to everyone that introduced themselves. Hello, thank you for joining. Thank you for joining. Always nice to see you. Thank you for joining me tonight. Highly appreciate it. All right, so let's carry on, shall we? All right, so with the gel position inside of the softbox, that's going to create obviously a purple color. But if you crank the volume up of that backdrop light, the background is going to look that Omo clean backdrop is what we like to call it, the whitewashed backdrop. As you can see with the results here, so that was with the Octobox used as the backdrop light, but with the gel position on the inside, it just created that rim light around the edges of our model as well. So depending on the color that you use, that will obviously be the color of the rim light that you'll create on your subject. So you can switch back and forth between different colored gels. Yeah, just according to your fancy, you can experiment on a day. All right, and I showed you that black board that I used as a makeshift black backdrop as well. So with that position in place, the Octobox light will just kind of bleed around the backdrop itself, and it will create this dual rim light from either side. So what you can say here, as I mentioned at the beginning, the backdrop light kind of provides a two-in-one purpose. So it's a backdrop light and a rim light at the same time. So as you can see from my setup here, this was just two lights. And by looking at that, you may have thought that it was 1, 2, 3, 4 lights, minimum lights. So just two lights used here. Yeah, so it's a nifty trick using the Octobox as a backdrop light. Okay, so on the left-hand side, you can see what happens with that backdrop light not triggering whatsoever. So you can see the wrinkles of the softbox diffuser there in the background. Yeah, but as soon as that Octobox triggers, you can see the effect. We get that white background and we get that red wash around the edges of our model as well. So just to reiterate, on the left-hand side, backdrop light did not trigger. Right-hand side, backdrop light did trigger. And another example here, you can see it makes a massive difference. Okay, left-hand side, backdrop light did not trigger. And on right-hand side, backdrop light did trigger. Okay, so you may be wondering about this fuzzy lens flare stuff business that's going on in my images, something that may have looked quite peculiar to you. All right, so you can see the images here. Just going to go back to the beginning. All that fuzziness, those lens flares at the bottom, around the edges of my images. So how did I go about creating that? So that was not photoshopped in whatsoever. So this was done on location in a manner of speaking. There's a trick you can use, well, I can use a variety of different things, right? So I used wax paper, I used CDs, I used light bulbs, I've used cling wrap, etc. So the point of that, let me just get my face. Yeah, I just have to position myself carefully here, not to bump the microphone. All right, so as you're shooting, you just want to use a light bulb. You just want to position it around your lens as a means of catching that light. So you can experiment with your position, you can move it back and forth, and you can catch the light and create funky lens flares and distortions in your images. So I'm just going to try that with my camera here. Position a light bulb. So you can see the effect that it's creating. And it's also catching that backdrop light, that RGB light that I have at the background. All right, so you can just position that light bulb however which way. Now, obviously, what I did when I was shooting, obviously I had a lot of backdrop light going on. So if that light aimed at the camera, it's just going to catch this light bulb and create a lot of funky different lens flares. Okay, so light bulb as an example. What else can I use? I have a bunch of things here. So I used wax paper as well. Just kind of slit in it. You can kind of position it around the lens. You can see it creates some fuzziness. So as long as you keep focus on your model, just experiment with it. You can even use a rubber band and tie it around your lens. I prefer using freehand, so I know what I'm doing, or see what I'm doing, should I say. I saw a comment about using the gel itself. So yes, you can do that too. So you can use the gel kind of underneath the lens as well. You can see the funky effects that it's creating. Let's see if I can get my... Maybe this burn gel has some purpose. Maybe I can use it in the future. Cool. So you can see what I'm doing right here. Otherwise, what else do I have here? So things around your house that you think may work. Try cling wrap as well. No, so there's a bit of cling wrap. So that works quite well as well. So obviously, as I said, if you have a lot of backdrop light, this thing that you're using, be it cling wrap or light bulb, will just catch all of that light and will create some funky effects here. So I think that looks quite cool. So you may have seen this as part of those, do-it-yourself effects, internet articles, etc., etc. Another example that you can use is the CD. So CD can just position underneath, and that creates some interesting colors as well. Let's try this. Let's see if I can get... That's not too bad. What do you think? Shoot through the whole of the CD itself. All right, so as I said, try different things at your home. You can even try glass bottles, broken glass pieces as well. A bunch of variety of different things as well. So as I said, there are many of these do-it-yourself articles available on the internet as to funky ideas which you can use to create lens flares and distortions and reflections in your images itself. Okay, so that's what I used on the day. So just to go back to my images, that's all of these flares and distortions. That was all due to me just holding a light bulb to the lens. All right, so what I am going to do, first of all, I'm just going to show you the differences between no wax paper in this instance versus wax paper indeed. So on the left-hand side, that was no thingamabob used in front of the lens, so that's just a clean image. On the right-hand side, I used a strip of wax paper, just kind of held it underneath the lens itself just to catch that light. And this was an example of using a light bulb. So on the left-hand side, no object was used. On the right-hand side, a light bulb was used, just positioning that just in front of the lens. All right, so that's it for my slideshow. We're going to jump into a program called Satellite 3D. So I'm going to show you what the setup looked like. Just going to do that right now. Give me a moment. One day I will have a director that can do all of this stuff for me, but for the time being, I am man alone. So I have to orientate myself here. All right, so this is a program called Satellite 3D. It's a 3D simulated studio. And in this program, you can use different lighting, different light modifiers. You can use different models as well. You can use different settings, cameras, etc., etc. So you can kind of gauge what you need to do on the day itself. So you can experiment in this program that will give you a good impression as to what you can do on the day of shooting itself. Okay, so it's called Satellite 3D. I'm just going to remind you guys, if you do go to the link provided, so it is in the comment section. If you click on that link, use a discount code called CameraStuff, you'll get a 10% discount on the program. Okay, so just check out the comment section. You'll find it right there. Okay, so let's jump into this program, shall we? Okay, so here you can see what I did more or less on a day as far as the positioning of my lights were concerned. So obviously you can see here with your models, it needs to be placed right against the octobox itself. So I'm just going to switch the key light off. So you can see the effect that creates. So this is just one light on switched on itself. All right, so we can experiment with different gels. And try different colors. So it'll be quite useful to have an RGB light for this purpose as well. So you don't need to bother with gels. But if you have strobes and speed lights and whatnot, gels are the way to go. So you're going to try different colors. As far as the intensity is concerned, so if you crank the lights quite down low, so if you use minimum output, you can see we get this lovely purple color as a backdrop. So this is something that you can try out as well. So if you want a purple backdrop, you can just place a purple gel inside of that softbox. But that's not what I did on a day. So I just slowly cranked up the volume on the lights until I got that nice white clean backdrop. Now just be careful not to crank it up too high. Otherwise, we'll get a lot of lens flares. Now, I know we did lens flares with the light bulbs and whatnot, but just be careful with how far you crank up the intensity of that backdrop light. Because you don't want too much light spilling into your lens, because that's just going to create a lot of fuzziness and haziness. All right, so let's switch on our key light again. Bring that down low a little bit. All right, so I used an octobox on a day. You can otherwise use a beauty dish. I experimented with a beauty dish on a day as well. Let's find that. Okay, now the point of a beauty dish is just slightly crisper, slightly sharper, as opposed to a softbox. So it's kind of an in-between soft light and a hard light. It's kind of a middle ground, semi-soft light that you can use if you get tired of super soft lighting, as people occasionally do. Yeah, so it's just a great idea to use that or to have that as an option as well, because certain facial structures, should I say, respond better under the beauty dish as opposed to a softbox. All right, so this was more or less the setup that I used. Let me see. All right, so I'm just checking the comment section. So if you guys have any questions to ask, please do drop that in the comment section. Okay, I'm just going to go back to a softbox. 120 centimeter softbox. Just going to bring that low again. All right, so this program doesn't have a curved reflector, so I just use the stock standard reflector. This just provides a bit of fill in light. So obviously you just need to make sure this is out of the frame. Something that I normally struggle with quite intensely because I am terrible with composition. So I'd often need to crop the reflector out of the image itself. But yeah, if you're a lot more careful than what I am, just make sure that that reflector is out of the frame. Okay, I'm going to point off that reflector to provide some bounce light. Just get underneath that jawline, just to provide a nice bottom-up fill-in light. All right, so now in terms of the black backdrop, okay, I'm just going to use a blackboard. Obviously, this is way too big, so I'm just going to resize that. Okay, yeah, so we can look silly. But yeah, so what we need to do is get that black backdrop behind our model. It's not always easy to do. Let's try that. Huh. There we go. All right, so with that light blocker in place, so as mentioned, it can be something like a flag or black cardboard or paper backdrop that you cut to size. So it doesn't need to be anything fancy, to be honest with you. As long as it's thick enough that it doesn't bleed through any light through the material itself. But yeah, if you can position it quite carefully, you have yourself a makeshift black backdrop. And you can see the light from our octobox at the back. So our backdrop light is just kind of bleeding around the edges of our backdrop and is providing rim light around our subject here. So there's a way of cheating yourself to two lights. You can use one light itself, and it kind of gives the impression that you use two lights from either side. Try out different colors here as well. So I'm quite fond of the orange, as you may have noticed. But yeah, so you can experiment with different intensities as well. So if you want less of that rim light, you can just crank down the volume of the light, or you can increase it if you really want to be extra on a day. All right, so with that black backdrop positioned, you have a makeshift black backdrop. And the light from our octobox, our backdrop light, is bleeding around the edges of our backdrop and is providing that rim light around the edges of our subject. Okay, so that is precisely what I did on a day. Yeah, I've shown you the images. I'm just going to go back to that. Yep, so this is what it looked like in real life. So with a big octobox that I used as a backdrop light and as a rim light, just to have the model position against the octobox itself. If you want a darker background, a black backdrop, you can just use a makeshift black cardboard flag, as I said, paper backdrop cut to size. You can just position that in place, and the light from that octobox will just bleed around the edges of your backdrop and provide a nice rim light. All right, so do you all have a good impression as to how things were done on a day? Do you think you can recreate this in your own studio? Are there any other questions that you would like to ask me? Well, you have me here. This is the point why we do these live stuff, is so that we can interact with you guys. So we have a very nice crowd watching. So I would like it if you guys ask questions, and I'll tackle it as we go along. Okay, while we're waiting, I'm going to open up Lightroom. So I'm going to show you all of the images that I took on a day, so you can see the amount of mistakes that I've made on a day as well. It's one thing showing you all of the nice images, all of the fancy edited results, but I think it's also worthwhile showing you all of the images so that you have a better impression as to what went on during the day. And also, if you have questions asked about editing as well, by all means. All right, so as usual, I use my mannequin head just to test the lights out on. It's great to have a mannequin head. It's always nice to experiment beforehand before the model arrives, so that you just know where your lights need to be, what the intensities need to be, etc., etc. Okay, so these are the raw images. So on a day, as you can see, the edge of the softbox in the top left-hand corner, and obviously the reflector at the bottom there. So chances are you're going to get all of that in the shot every now and then, so you just need to crop that out or clone it out. So what I did here, this was without any fancy objects placed in front of the lenses. Sorry, losing my words. I do apologize. It was a bit of a long day. All right, so yeah, so this was without any objects placed in front of the lens itself, so just clean images. But here I started experimenting with some stuff, so CDs, wax paper, light bulbs. So not all of it looks pleasant, not all of it works as it should, but yeah, it's worth experimenting. You're going to get a few hits and misses. So this was wax paper. I can see here that it was a little bit too much. And I tried to maneuver it around the entire lens as well. But yeah, as I said, sometimes it works, sometimes it doesn't work. All right, so here it was with a blue gel in that softbox. And using wax paper again. So you can see I'm terrible with framing my images because I always get something else that shouldn't belong in the shot itself, always in the shot. So that reflector you can see right at the bottom there, that shouldn't be there. All right, so I wanted to know about the bottom reflector. Which light is it bouncing? Okay, so let's go back to Satellite 3D. All right, so that reflector, sorry, if I have Lightroom open, this program lags terribly. All right, so that bottom reflector reflects light from the key light being the front light illuminating the front of your subject, but it is also bouncing light from the backdrop light as well. Yeah, so in this scenario, it's bouncing light from both switched on lights. So it's bouncing light from the main light and it's bouncing light from the backdrop light as well. So typically that wouldn't be the case. Typically the reflector will bounce light from your key light itself. Okay, so you go and imagine, let me just get my face here. Okay, so this is my key light, right? So with that reflector in place, it's just going to bounce that light onto my face. You can kind of see on my face some light reflecting off it. All right, so to answer your question, that bottom reflector is reflecting light from the main light, and in this instance, in this setup, it's bouncing light from the backdrop light as well. Okay, have you tried a white coral board on both sides of the model? Are you talking about V-flats? Sorry, I'm not certain as to what you mean by coral boards. Yeah, so two reflectors from either side. Is that what you mean? Yep, so the curved reflector kind of does that trick by itself. So if you don't have a curved reflector, you can use two reflectors from either which side. That will just create a nice filled-in look on your model's face. So basically you're going to get rid of all of the shadows, if that is what you meant. So if not, if I understood you incorrectly, do apologize. Yeah, so if you can just tell me if I was stupid there or not. All right, so what is the best way to use an optical snoot? All right, so Sir CPware, I have an entire video dedicated to the optical snoot. So it is on our CameraStuff YouTube page. So something like this, what we're doing right now, I made an entire live discussion about the optical snoot. So do check out the CameraStuff YouTube channel. It should be there. But I will try and answer you as quickly as possible. So what is the best way to use an optical snoot? The optical snoot is extremely versatile. You can do a lot of different things with it. That's kind of the magic of the optical snoot, is that it's incredibly versatile. You can do a lot of different creative things with it. So there's no best way of doing it. or using it, should I say. Just all depends on how you want to go about what you want to create. So I have an optical snoot here. Okay, this is the example of the Hylam one where you need to use an external lens on it. So the point of an optical snoot is that it creates a focusable beam of light, and you can use gobos, what are referred to as gobos. So these are like light stencils that you place inside of the optical snoot itself, and it will project that shape onto your subject or backdrop itself. So be it a star shape, Venetian blinds, trees, whatever it may be, we have like 50, 60 different gobos available. But yeah, there's an entire video online on CameraStuff YouTube page, like 40, 50 minutes long, where I tried out a variety of different things with the optical snoot. Okay, I'm just going to go back to Lightroom. Now, so you can see more examples where the octobox, the backdrop light, didn't trigger whatsoever. And here the shot before it triggered. I think it may have been me shooting a little bit too quickly. The lights didn't recycle fast enough. But I kind of enjoy that happening, because every now and then you do get dramatic shots like this, but only used for one light. And sometimes one light is better. You don't always need fancy tricks. Sometimes you can create something, pleasant and simple, but simple doesn't mean necessarily not good. Now, simple lighting, simple posing often does the trick. As I said, you don't always need fancy tricks and gizmos and things to create stunning images. All right, so this was me using the blackboard. In this instance, it was a black flag. It is positioned behind the model in between the softbox itself. So you can see how bad I was at aiming. So you can see the edges of the backdrop and obviously the octobox in the background there. Yeah, so if you're more careful with your camera, obviously you can get better framing. But if you do get results like this, it's obviously just easy to crop or to clone out those edges. Yeah, here's another example of the backdrop light not triggering. And again, pleasant results. As I said, I don't mind sometimes the lights not triggering whatsoever, because you do get different results, and those results may look stunning. Okay, I'm just going to scan through some images here. Got a question from Tabang. You need to tell me when I need to interview, mister. So jump into my WhatsApp and tell me when you're available. All right, so the optical snoot with gobo is being overused these days, or is it just me? Yeah, so we do have these trends. So they kind of start and people get excited about it. But, if a lot of people jump on board with the trend, it can become tiresome very quickly. I don't subscribe to that, to be honest with you. I don't care if things are trendy or not. I just want to do my own thing. If other people are doing it, even better than what I'm doing, that's not really a bother to me whatsoever. But that's just me personally. Obviously, I'm not that deep into the business side of things. So I don't do photography full time. So obviously, doing it full time, you need to be mindful of the trends, and if something becomes a little bit too oversaturated or used too often. But yeah, as I said, that's just me personally. I'm not that bothered about what people are doing or not doing, to be honest with you. Okay, yeah, so to go back to the Lightroom here. Okay, so I'm just going to scan through these images. So if you guys have anything to say, anything to add, please do drop a comment. So I shot 2 different models on the day. Bianca first and then Nasipi here. Okay, so that was with the octobox with the blue gel in place. Just going to scan forward. I want to show you these results. So that was without any gels in the softbox whatsoever. So no gel, no color, and I used wax paper around the edges of the lens itself. And I think that looks quite dreamy, quite heavenly, in fact. I'm going to use this in future again, because I do quite like the effect. Provides a nice halo light. And it's not too distracting with too many vivid colors as well. So it's nicely muted, very simplistic. So you can experiment with gels or without gels. So the powers are in your hand on the day. All right, so here using the blackboard again. In fact, I want to show you just a little bit forward. Now, so this is what a setup looked like. So with a blackboard in place with the octobox right behind it. So if you needed a better visual representation as to what I did on the day, big octobox in the back, blackboard placed in front of it. The size of the blackboard, if it's big in comparison to the octobox, you're going to get less wraparound light. If the blackboard background is quite small relative to the octobox, you're going to get plenty of wraparound light. So that is something to experiment with on the day as well. That applies to the size of the softbox as well, obviously. So the bigger the size of the softbox, the more wraparound light you're going to get. The smaller the softbox, the less wraparound light you're going to get. And here I wanted to show you a visual, or a better visual representation as to what the setup looked like. So with a big softbox used as a backdrop. And also providing a nice green wraparound light because I have the green gel placed inside of the softbox. All right, so something I just want to really get out there is that you don't need to use the type of fancy equipment that I used. So if you have a slightly smaller softbox, you can still use that. You're obviously going to be somewhat more limited as far as the range of your model's positions and poses are concerned, also your framing as well. If you don't have a curved reflector, you can use a standard reflector as well. As far as your key lights are concerned, you can use stock standard softboxes as well. The magic of a shot is obviously the technique itself. So it's not the equipment per se, it is, the person behind the camera. And so now that you know the technique, you can apply this in your own studio as well. All right, so nearing the end of my shoot here. So what I did here, this is when I started using a beauty dish with a gridded honeycomb attached to it. So you can see the light is a bit more focused on her face, as opposed to the softbox, which is a bit more of a blanket wraparound light, far more widespread as opposed to the beauty dish. So the light is just a bit more focused on her face, so that brings a lot of attention, a lot of focus on her face itself. And I can see here in particular. So with that beauty dish, it was a 55 centimeter with a honeycomb grid attached to it. So this provides a bit more focus, a bit more a focused beam of light to where you are directing the light. So you don't get as much, the light is not as widespread, you don't get as much light spillage out of the honeycomb as well. Yeah, so I started using the light bulbs here again. All right, so in the comment section, I do see a lot of familiar faces. So I know you on Facebook. So if you want to try this out, if you still have any questions, you can drop me a DM directly, or you can otherwise ask CameraStuff. Obviously, working at CameraStuff, I'm available whenever we are open. So if you have any other questions to ask after the video itself, you can ask me, and I'll be more than happy to help you out. But the point I was getting at, I see a lot of familiar faces. So if you guys want to try this out, I am very keen to see your results as well. Okay, so take that as a challenge. All right, so I struggle with gels. I can't seem to get the right amount of light. but I'll give them a try once again using these tricks. Now, so gels can be quite tricky. It's difficult, or should I say, it's very easy to overpower the gels with other lights, and then you don't get the full effect of the gels themselves. So it's easy to kind of wash out the gel effect from the other strobes. So a good trick is to use one light at a time. So use the gel lighting. So if you're using rim lights or backdrop lights using gels, use that first. Kind of experiment with it first, find the right intensity, then switch on your other lights. And just to make sure that those lights aren't washing out the gel effect. So kind of use it or go about it one step at a time. That has often worked for me. As I said, it's very easy to wash out the effects of the gels when you introduce other lighting, key lights or whatever it may be, to your setup. So just try it one light at a time. Specifically use for gel lighting, kind of find the right intensities, the settings with that light, then start introducing your secondary lights. But otherwise, what does help is gridded light modifiers. So if you use big soft boxes but don't have honeycombs attached to them, or beauty dishes without honeycombs, if you don't use, let me put it like this. The bigger the light modifier, if it's not directional, that light's going to bounce all over the show. It's going to bounce off the ceiling, it's going to bounce off the walls, it's going to interfere with your gel lighting. So what you want to create with very focused lights is kind of independent zones on your model, if that makes sense. So your key light needs to hit this area only, whereas your gel lighting needs to hit the other areas only. So you don't want the lights to interfere with one another. And for you to manage to do that, you need very directional, very accurate lighting. So Peway, did CameraStuff have an adapter to plug to Godox 8200s? Yes, we certainly do. It's called the Godox ADB2. It's something I'm going to invest in soon as well. Right, so with that adapter, you can mount to 8200s, effectively creating a 400 watts per second strobe. Yes, we do have it available. It's about 1,400 Rand, if I'm not mistaken. Just check our website, give us a call. We can certainly help you out. Alrighty, so that's the end of my shoot. So now it's just you and I again. All right, so if you have any other questions to ask, please do drop them in the comment section. We have had a massive crowd today. I'm very, very happy about that. But also with big crowds, I want a lot of questions as well. If not, I think that's going to be the end of my presentation. So I don't know if it's cope or not, but I do believe if I don't get a lot of questions, that means I've did a good job with my presentation. But as I said, I don't know if that's cope or not. All right, so if you guys do have questions, I'm going to give it 1 or 2 minutes. If not, I'm going to call it good night. It is a big pleasure, Natasha. Glad that you enjoyed it. And again, Tabang, please do hit me up on WhatsApp. Yeah, I want to interview you. People need to know about you. Your work is incredible. We want to present you to the world. Okay, I just want to see if I didn't miss any questions. All right, so I think I'm going to call it good night. So just to reiterate, if you guys do have questions after the video, you can, contact CameraStuff directly. Whenever it is business hours, I am available as well. So I'm here behind my computer most of the time in my bat cave. So if you have a question about this live, it will come directly to me and I will answer you directly as well. So I'm available business hours. So if any questions concerning photography, we are available. If we are, I wonder if I can private message you from here. I don't think so. But yeah, I'll reach you out on Facebook. Okay, now we can manage to do that. Hopefully I'm not in trouble. Okay, so I think that's going to be it. All right, so thank you for joining. It was a great crowd today. Do appreciate it. So we're going to do more of this in future. Just stick around on CameraStuff Facebook page, emails, newsletters, etc. Announcements will be made well in advance as to what's happening at CameraStuff Live. Right, so thank you for joining. Hope you have a pleasant night further. That's it from my side. Cheerios. Now the awkward silence at the end.